International Drive is Orlando's most dynamic destination. Surrounded by Central Florida's major attractions, International Drive provides thrills and the fun spots for memorable vacations. It all started with Finley Hamilton, a businessman with an idea of building a resort for tourists visiting Walt Disney World. His lone hotel on North I Drive would soon have neighbors, and to the south, a major development that would bring millions of business travelers and their dollars to Orlando.
The first phase of the convention center opened in 1983.
However, the question still remained. If we build it, will they come?
Selling the convention center was the most difficult part, convincing meeting planners that going in the middle of nowhere in Florida was good for them.
And even if they did come to the convention center, where would they sleep? In order to become a top convention destination, Orlando needed
butts and beds.
You had a convention center, you had the airport to bring people in, but we were missing what's called a headquarter hotel.
No hotels around. This was not good for the neighborhood.
My first reaction was tears.
Along with hotels, discount shopping was born on iDrive. Bargain stores to buy just about everything. After all, there's one thing tourists love to do, and that's
shop. People are coming here to International Drive to go to the attractions and to shop.
You have to have something that brings them to you.
We have everything, whatever anybody can take back with them.
The gift shops ended up being a whole lot more profitable than any of us realized.
Beyond the designer stores, attractions, and souvenir shops is a journey about the challenges and rewards of constructing the perfect destination.
We were young, we were hungry, but now we have to change it from being just a family destination to a convention destination.
From Memphis, Tennessee came a real estate developer who would gamble not once, but twice on International Drive.
Thankfully, the Peabody Hotel Group made a very risky decision in the early 1980s. Otherwise, this convention center would never have met the goals that it has met.
We were the first ones really out here to be in this convention market. The early days were very difficult because the business wasn't here in Orlando.
It took a long time. It didn't happen overnight.
International Drive wasn't an overnight success, but dedication and partnership would turn Orange Groves into the place where the world comes to meet.
It was a 150,000 square foot exhibition hall. The county had not constructed a building that large ever. In fact, I believe at the time it was the largest single construction project going on in the state of Florida. The more challenging piece of it was that it was really built in the middle of kind of nowhere.
The middle of nowhere. At the dawn of a new decade, International Drive, especially the southern end, was still undeveloped. Like a casino in the middle of the desert, the stakes were high for iDrive's new headliner. The $54 million project, Orange County's massive new convention center, offered Central Florida a big ticket to the major leagues. But to play in the major leagues, you need a good team.
To be brutally honest, I didn't know a thing in the world about convention business.
Plucked from Winter Garden politics, Tom Sewell was appointed by Orange County Administrator Jim Harris to oversee the construction of the new facility slated to open in 1982.
I had the assignment to go with some board members and Tourist Development Council members to look at, I believe, 10 of the largest facilities around the country, asking them if they had a chance to redo their building, what would they do differently? And we took those ideas and incorporated them into construction plans. I probably have more knowledge about convention centers than anybody else, other than maybe Jim Harris.
The initial convention center had to have a very large, open, clear span of ability to see the Harlem Globetrotters, for example. There wasn't anywhere else in this community in which you could do that sort of thing at the time.
The convention center would need a lot of meeting and exhibit space, plenty of places to park, and a name.
The vision of the convention center originally for the county was to really be a convention and civic center. In fact, those who would remember that period in our history would know that the original name of the convention center was the Orange County Convention and Civic Center.
The idea was sold to the public that it would be not just a building for conventions, but something that the community as a whole could enjoy.
Tom Sewell hired the first director of the convention center, Frank Poe. However, he left the position shortly after construction began in 1980.
When Frank left, we were kind of in a lurch because we're at a critical stage of plan development. I said, I'll tell you what, I'll kind of look after things while we find another director.
Jim Harris appointed Tom to take over the operations of the center, from deputy to director. Tom quickly graduated from knowing nothing about conventions to running the show. Another new tenant on the north side would also redefine the tourist experience in Orlando. A Tennessee-based company looking to expand their retail business from Memphis started looking at land on I-Drive.
Our family business is called Bell's Enterprises, and we own all types and develop all types of real estate. I came down here looking for the outlet mall site probably in 1976, 1977.
Outlet malls emerged in the early 70s as places where manufacturers could sell their retail directly to consumers.
The first outlet center we built in Memphis, and it was the first outlet mall built from ground up. There's always been outlet centers primarily up in the northeast part of the country. Those outlet projects, though, were usually built in old manufacturing facilities. But ours was the first one that was built from scratch.
With their multitude of shops and discount products, an outlet mall is ideal for tourist destinations. Bell's Enterprises felt certain I-Drive was worth the gamble. Thousands of bargain hunters looking to fill their suitcases with designer clothing and shoes would rather pay less for more.
What we learned from the outlet center business in Memphis and working with all the tenants there is that where they wanted to be in the end is in a city that had a high degree of tourism. At the time we developed that center, about 75% of the shoppers were tourists. So as we looked around the country, Orlando's obviously the top choice for us. That's how we kind of focused in on the northern end of I-Drive.
Geographically, North I-Drive also kept outlet tenants from competing with the shopping malls selling the same product.
The outlet stores really at the time were companies, quite honestly, that would not even have their own names on the store. Today you see all the designer outlet stores and that type of thing. Back in those days they created names to operate under because they didn't want to have visible competition with the department stores. So they were new in the business. They were trying to somewhat stay undercover in terms of what they were doing. People used to think they were going to be defective products or something like that, but they actually were not. They were just overruns or oversupplied products.
Marty Bells and his band of undercover outlet retailers settled into North I-Drive in 1981. Billed as the largest outlet center in the United States, the Bells Factory Outlet Mall was 285,000 square feet of shopping bliss at the corner of Oak Ridge Road and I-Drive.
It was out in the boondocks, really. It was just land over there. And the road, International Drive up in that part of the city, was just a two-lane paved strip of road. Nothing out there. So it was pretty desolate at the time.
Marty Bells wasn't entirely alone. Bargain shopping appeared on North I-Drive in the mid-70s as retailers competed with Mickey Mouse for tourist dollars. This new crop of entrepreneurs came from all over the world, searching for the American dream, opportunity, and
money, obviously.
Money. I realized that I could be my own boss, make my own hours, work as hard as I wanted to work, and do what I wanted to do, and be able to have a family. Of course, I was single at that time, but I was planning.
International Drive became a budget alternative to Disney and its higher prices for hotel rooms and t-shirts. One of the first gift shop owners out there was a guy named Eli Safassi. Really interesting guy. He's like a 8th grade dropout, I think he was, from Hobart, Indiana. Came down to Florida, worked in gas stations, and found out that selling t-shirts in your gas stations was really a big hit with tourists, and you could make a lot of money doing that. And then in the mid-70s opened up a t-shirt shop on International Drive where he was grossing $100,000 a week, which was big, big money. He was really one of the fathers of that business and ended up selling his t-shirt shops to an Indian businessman named Nur Allah Khan, who was a big presence on International Drive.
He was one of the first immigrants from the Asian subcontinent. I think Even when we came here on vacation in '79, we knew what International Drive was.
Noor Ullah Khan, a Pakistani businessman from England, brought his family to Orlando for vacation and eventually stayed, purchasing gift shops from Eli Safasi and creating more of his own.
These shops were already built. He built more along the way, but he initially bought 6 stores off of him.
Khan became the king of gift shops, enjoying massive profits in the 80s from tourists wanting that perfect Florida souvenir.
Those were really the very, very fat years. We had everything. I mean, there was a time over where you could actually buy alligators. You could buy baby alligators and take them with you. It was legal.
I started out selling Kotex gum and cigarettes, and that brings the tourist to your shop. Whatever the tourist needed, I tried to accommodate their needs.
One of the biggest gift shop moguls on International Drive is Ron Dowdy. In the mid-70s, this former Air Force pilot positioned his radar on International Drive.
I was radar navigator in B-52s for 232 trips over North and South Vietnam. My permanent duty station was Orlando, Florida. That's what brought me here. Truth of the matter is, I managed the state senator's campaign for 12 months and did very well, and had a chance to go to Tallahassee, and I elected to stay here in town and to go into the hotel motel gift shop business. My employees were paid $1.80 an hour, and that was more than minimum wage in those days.
Dowdy worked as a hotel gift shop manager near Walt Disney World. It didn't take long for him to recognize the profits of selling T-shirts, mugs, and postcards. By 1976, he had 15 hotel gift shops.
The hotel people in those days did not really know what a gift shop was. Their specialty was to make sure that the hotels were run correctly, and they did not see the financial value of a gift shop. They all got a fat percentage, and I was doing okay taking the balance of it. I went ahead and started buying raw land on International Drive with the profits I made from the gift shops.
Ron Dowdy was well on his way to planning for that future family. And what better way to ensure your success than to own your own land? He met George Millay, the developer of Wet n Wild, and knew exactly what his next plan would be.
I was going to jump on his bandwagon, but I didn't want to be his partner. So I negotiated to buy the acre of land next to Wet n Wild. That was my first purchase of land on International Drive, which subsequently ended up being 3.5 acres next to Wet n Wild. Years later, 1985 or so, Finley Hamilton, he had the property across from his hotel, a large parcel that he wanted to sell, but he did not want to piecemeal it. He and I were able to structure a financial arrangement that I could buy the whole thing, some 8 acres.
By the mid-'80s, Dowdy and other entrepreneurs had succeeded in creating a strip saturated with cheap shopping alternatives, setting a permanent trend on North I Drive.
We don't have anything that's expensive. Around here, you have to keep it at a certain price level.
The tourists love to buy gifts like that, and they look for deals. It's a top priority.
It's just typical of most every tourist in the world, whether we leave Orlando and go to New York City, and I want to send my family salt and pepper shakers of the Statue of Liberty. Now, I'm not going to pay $50 for each one. I'm going to pay $1.99 if I can, but that means I thought of my family. I thought of the people back home.
Ron Dowdy's village of shops and restaurants grew into a small kingdom of his own that he nicknamed Dowdyville. The self-proclaimed mayor of Dowdyville never lost sight of the main reason for his success: the tourist.
When Dunkin' Donut first opened up, they were one of my tenants for 25 years. As I'm taking the children to school, I would wear this big, deep blue, Dowdy blue velour bathrobe, and I would come by there in the morning, rip off a couple dozen donuts, and if I saw a nice family there, husband, wife, and a couple kids, I would take a minute and I would ask them why they were here, how they got here, where they were staying, and what I could do to make their trip here better. What could I build that they would need that they didn't have? And this was 30 years ago. And they would tell me, and we would visit, and I would then pick up their check and give them another donut or two and let them go on their way. But I used that philosophy to build the other items that I built on International Drive. And I would go run out, jump in the car, take them to school, and come back home.
While Ron Dowdy was getting to know what the tourists wanted, Orlando Central Park, led by Jim Brown, was studying cities across the country to design a strategy for South I Drive.
We had a good part of North I Drive to look at because they were ahead of us on the curve, and there was not necessarily any master plan continuity for that area.
South I Drive did have a master plan, Plaza International, Orlando Central Park's vision of a host community for the Civic Center. Luxury hotels, high-class shopping, and fine dining would appeal to the convention market. Plaza International was open for business.
We built the roads in at the same time they were building the center, and voila, all of a sudden, it's a whole new world.
However, everything was not going according to plan at the Civic Center. In 1981, construction fell behind schedule. That summer, everything was going smoothly. Then suddenly,
I was just getting ready to walk out the door. One of my people called and said, you better not come to the office, you better go to the convention center directly. The media's out the gate waiting to talk with you. I said, well, what's going on? He said, well, about 4 o'clock this morning, I heard a lot of bangs, sounded like dynamite going off.
what he heard was the cracking sound of steel beams supporting the roof coming apart.
The building was 150 feet across, and they don't make steel in that length, so they had to use about 3 sections. All 7 beams had cracked right where they'd been welded together.
Although the Civic Center was never in danger of collapsing, it was a costly repair that delayed the opening and the start of new convention business.
It was frightening, to be very honest with you. I had visions of all sorts of things happening. We lost about 4 months construction time and probably about $4 million in additional contract costs.
All 7 beams were reinforced, and engineers examined the building from top to bottom. On February 25, 1983, the Orange County Convention and Civic Center opened in grand style. 14,000 guests, dressed in their finest evening apparel, enjoyed a splendid dinner and gala with music performed by a world-famous orchestra.
The opening event was the Boston Pops Symphony Orchestra, and it was a sold-out event. The only problem with that event is the bleachers pulled out from the side. The orchestra is down here, so you wound up sitting and looking this way at the orchestra. You could get a crink in your neck after listening to Beethoven for several hours.
The Boston Pops were just the first in a decade of big events and big hair that performed at Orlando's new center.
Once it was open, there was a pent-up demand.
Madonna was here.
Billy Joel, Kenny Rogers.
Basketball games, boat shows.
The circus, which means elephants.
Barbara Mandrell.
Alabama.
Car shows.
High school graduations and knitting parties or whatever.
It was impossible, virtually impossible to work. It was just noise, 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 noise.
But the real money maker here is the convention center operation.
The Orange County Convention and Civic Center met the goals of providing entertainment for locals. However, the convention business was developing at a slower pace. Leaders needed to figure out quickly how to engage the convention market.
In 1983, when the building opened, we lacked pretty much everything that would serve the building. It was really a rural destination. In fact, the first 3 years of business at the convention center were mostly consumer events, shows that would attract those of us who lived here to come out here and buy a ticket, as opposed to the real mission of the convention center, which is to bring people in from the outside world.
Spend their dollars, bring economic impact, then leave, and leave the dollars here.
It was a learning process for me. I was able, however, to hire some good, experienced people to help me in that effort.
Tom Sewell hired Kathy Canning, an executive from New York who once worked for hotel giant Leona Helmsley. She would join a sales team responsible for recruiting major conventions to Orlando. It was not a dream job at first.
When she was originally hired in 1985-86, as I recall, she cried.
The first day I went to McDonald's for lunch, since that was the only place to go, I cried. I thought, how on earth am I going to sell the convention center to convention groups from New York, from Washington, where they're all headquartered in California. Orlando's known for Disney World, for Mickey Mouse, for attractions, for vacations. not necessarily a business destination.
Plaza International was a tough sell for meeting planners accustomed to a variety of amenities near a convention center.
There were little orange flags that meant something was going to be developed, but I didn't know what. So in order to sell to groups, they would say, well, why should we come to Orlando? What's around the convention center? Do you have hotels? No. Do you have restaurants? No. Do you have transportation? No. So it was just the convention center without any real infrastructure at the time.
Convincing organizations to come to Orlando wasn't the only challenge. Major conferences were already booked several years in advance at other centers.
The lead time, believe it or not, is 5 years, 10 years. We even now have groups on the books for the next 20 to 25 years. So I had quite a rude awakening, and it was a tough adjustment.
The biggest obstacle facing Plaza International's first-class convention center was the lack of a first-class convention hotel. As experts in the tourist industry say, iDrive needed butts in beds.
The nearest hotel was 1.5 miles away. You can imagine trying to sell to American Dental Association or American Heart Association, come do your convention or your association meeting in Orlando, where's my hotel?
This community had not yet grown to a depth of understanding of the hospitality industry. We had a long, hard learning curve for a few years to catch up.
Orlando Central Park had hoped to use the Civic Center to lure the large hotel chains. Without a headquarter hotel, Orange County would potentially lose millions of convention dollars.
We were not hoteliers. We didn't particularly want to be in that business, but we had to be in order to kind of break the ice down here. We're looking to get more investment in this area.
The land all around the convention center was designed for hotels. They had to be hotels.
We got lucky and partnered with the Bells family.
Marty Bells was enjoying financial success at the outlet centers on North I Drive. With over 100 stores and a second phase near completion, was it time to take another gamble further south?
We were always looking for opportunities in the markets that we go into for more than one product. When I was working on the outlet center here, I read about the proposed Orange County Convention Center, and I made contact with Jim Brown. At that time, actually, Orlando Central Park was working with another development company to build a hotel on this site. But that did not work out for them, which was great for us. I stayed in touch with Jim, and when that fell through, Jim and I got back together and we started talking about this project.
We made a joint venture with the Bells, designed and built the Peabody.
Bells Enterprises was already in the hotel business with several Holiday Inn franchises around the country. In 1975, they purchased a well-known hotel in Memphis that had fallen into foreclosure.
It was a hotel that was actually a Sheraton at the time, called the Sheraton Peabody. This purchase was shortly after Dr. King was killed in downtown Memphis, so a lot of businesses had exited the downtown area. They had problems, and we took an opportunity.
Rescuing a hotel is one thing, but building a second Peabody in a relatively new market involved greater uncertainty.
This was designated as a tourist site, 100%. And to build a quality four-star hotel across the street from a brand new convention center in what was perceived as a leisure destination was very risky for the owners of this hotel.
It was a huge risk. It was a huge risk for the county when they built the convention center. It was a huge risk for a private company.
The Peabody really was relatively unknown in the country. So here you had an unknown convention center working with an unknown hotel in an unknown convention market and meeting market. Nobody knew what we were all about.
The Peabody began construction in 1984, and the Plaza's first headquarter hotel opened in November of 1986.
When we opened the hotel, it was a big day for us, of course. It was our second Peabody, so it was important to us from that standpoint. but it was also a unique and high-quality product for this area.
Rising 27 stories towards the sky, the hotel included over 800 rooms and 58,000 square feet of meeting and convention space. More importantly, it was a doorstep away from the convention center.
You can put a good amount of your folks that will stay there, eat there, sleep there, and be able to come to the convention center during the day for the meeting.
It took a while to get the momentum built up. Those early years were tough, I can tell you.
The convention sales team now had the demanding task of finding groups and expressing the benefits of hosting a convention in Orlando.
We just went on the road, traveled, trade shows, picked up the phone, called clients. We had strong sales folks, strong messaging.
Quality, service, low-cost facilities.
Hospitality.
With the airport, you had great transportation.
Flexibility, weather, all of it make for an incredible destination.
That was a part of the process that we had to embark on this educational regimen to convince the meeting planners that this was a viable meeting market and convention market.
Many, many clients were looking for someplace different, looking for someplace new where they can bring their groups, and we were able to provide that for them.
Persistence generated results. By the late 80s, Orlando ranked 13th in the nation for conventions and meetings. Tom Sewell left the convention center in 1985 to take over Jim Harris's job as county administrator. Leaders in the county praised this one-time deputy turned director for getting the center built, staffed, and ready for conventions.
It was a dream assignment. I loved doing that work out there. Probably should have stayed there.
His assistant director, David O'Neill, became the new director, leading the center through its first expansion.
In 1989, the county added another couple 100,000 square feet into what we now call Phase 2. If we said we were going to expand the building and we were going to do it by a certain date, we were successful, we did it. So that shows became less afraid to book a building that had not yet been built, because Orlando and Orange County really carried through on their commitments.
Everyone is now suddenly looking for Orlando and the Convention Center, and we have a market, so it's all about supply and demand, and the demand was strong.
iDrive was paved with conviction and commitment in less than a decade.
Had to have a lot of faith, a lot of nerve, a lot of strength really in the end. What we in the Convention Center did was the catalyst for all that we see down in this area today.
Mr. Bell had a dream, again, of a discount mall. And if he could do a discount mall, he could do a hotel. And yes, it all worked. And I think he, with others like Harris Rosen, provide the inspiration for whole generations of people in a capitalistic society that say, I can do it too. If he can do it, I can do it.
There's so many factors involved in a successful business, whether it be a hotel or a gift shop or a shopping center. So many factors involved. You've just got to continue to persevere.
International Drive was poised to be America's next leisure and business destination.
We're bringing the leadership of business and industry to Orlando on a weekly basis, and that is building our image worldwide.